the undying agitation of a people driven to a breaking point by a very daunting reality they find themselves, from an historical, boisterous livelihood now tumbled by environmental degradations from oil spills and gas flaring. The Ogoni people now find themselves at the threshold of a lifeline for a better tomorrow with the release of $1 billion intervention fund. Would this address the numerous environmental challenges facing the entire Niger Delta region, which is in a desperate polity that cries out for intervention? Welcome to Question Time. I'm Benga Ashiru. You may also join in this conversation by sending us your comments on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. On this edition of the program, we will try to find answers to the many unanswered questions about the world we live in, the global climate deal, the current heat waves, and the Niger Delta cleanup plan by the federal government, which is a crucial aspect of the implementation of the UNEP report. Channels TV was at the Federal Ministry of Environment in Abuja, where we met with the Environment Minister, Amina Mohammed. She reiterates federal government's commitment in addressing the environmental issues affecting the country. Join us in this exclusive interview. Honorable Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Question Time.
You're very welcome.
Let's start by looking at the UNEP reports submitted since 2011. Very crucial reports. But one wonders, why did it take so long for the federal government to consider implementation?
It has taken a long time. It took a long time to get the report done, but after having it submitted to government in 2011, I think various attempts were made to try to get it begun to be implemented. There have been some formalities put in place to create structures to do that, but at the end of the day it didn't really happen, and I think perhaps the political will to actually implement that program or the recommendations of the UNEP report just didn't come to fruition. One of the promises that the President has made is to actually have that happen, go around the country, see what the concerns are of different constituencies, and clearly in the Niger Delta it was about how do we get the UNEP report implemented, a report that took a while to come into place, but a report that everyone's recommendations is embraced by people in the Niger Delta. So hopefully in the next few weeks we ought to see something happen there, but I think by and large it's been a lack of political will to really put that in place.
How feasible is this UNEP report? There's been argument in some quarters that it doesn't capture the realities of the entire Niger Delta region.
Well, the position is that the UNEP report itself addressed a critical challenge at the time in Ogoniland, and because of that, that's what the recommendations clearly provided for. But I think that what we've been seeing over the years is that this is a protracted issue that has impacted the whole of the Niger Delta, not just Ogoniland. So the report, I think this government will remain faithful to, and will remain faithful to beginning that cleanup in Ogoniland. But it does recognize that the whole of the Niger Delta is affected by oil pollution, and so therefore over the next 20 to 25 years that's what will happen. We will address the whole of the Niger Delta. I think it's important that we also take a step back and see that the causes of all of this have been different over time, and the responses to it not as effective as they should have been. So the cleanup that we're talking about now begins in Ogoniland, and it goes across the other states, oil-producing states in the Niger Delta.
Are you still going ahead with this implementation of this UNEP report in spite of the challenges that have been raised by from some quarters?
The UNEP report is sacrosanct, and I think, as I said, it's taken a long time, over many years of a struggle of the people in the Niger Delta, particularly in Ogoniland, to get something on paper that commits to that. And I think they all believe in that report, and it's just that we begin with that, and it's just that we start with the cleanup in Ogoniland.
Now let's look at the concerns raised by those working in the hydrocarbon pollution restoration project. They've complained that their 36 months salary arrears have not been paid, and they are saying that this should be considered before the UNEP implementation. What's your position on this?
Well, since this administration's come into place, we found a number of things and commitments that have been made, and I think every one of them has to be looked at and addressed to see where the merit or otherwise is. And one of the things that this ministry has done in collaboration with the other sectors involved is to review all of this. And I can assure everyone that whatever is due will be certainly paid. And we have had discussions with staff of the High Prep office. We've had discussions with the Ministry of Petroleum. So I think these will all be addressed. We're committed to do the right thing by people and by certainly the environment in the Niger Delta. So those will be addressed.
We have reports that you visited this polluted sites twice within 14 days. What can you tell us about the impact assessment of these sites?
Well, my first visit was actually in December after the climate change conference in Paris, and it really was about seeing what was happening to the environment across the country. But we did begin with a visit in Ogoniland to see, how bad and degraded the sites were. And I think that, without a shadow of a doubt, whatever you hear people say in the media or in reports, it is 10 times worse than that when you actually visit people in those situations who day in, day out are having to address the challenges of oil pollution. Only they can tell you what it feels like to do that. So visiting has been to the Focodos oil spill to see what had happened to people in those communities, but also to look around and see where, if we were going to launch this project, where would be the appropriate place to do that. And I think just to signal to people that the promises that the President made, he is sincere about and he will deliver on them.
So now, $1 billion has been earmarked for this implementation. That sounds huge. How do you intend to disburse this?
Well, clearly monies have been discussed, and the oil companies with the polluter pays principle have made commitments to the $1 billion that will be put on the table, remembering that that also includes the government. And that would be a start for what we would want to do. I think, as I said, this project goes over a number of years and will probably require a considerable amount more than that. But that's the first steps. And the first steps will be to build on work that has already been done. There has some work that's been done by the High Prep Office that has reviewed where these sites are, where we ought to begin the cleanup. And I think it's important that we really underscore that once we're talking about the cleanup, we're also talking about the day after, how to stay clean, how to involve communities in protecting their environment, how to look at the alternatives to third-party breaks, what is the livelihoods of people in the Niger Delta. If we're discussing the diversification of the Nigerian economy, then what's the role of the Niger Delta in that? And I think these are discussions that are ongoing as we grow our economy, as we look at the different opportunities for every Nigerian. And so with the cleanup, I think it's added value that we're thinking about that. It's not just how do we go clean today, but how do we stay clean tomorrow, and how do we make that a part of the country that is protected, and every Nigerian there has their rights and aspirations seen to.
You can also join in this conversation by sending your comment on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Coming up on Question Time. What can be done to ensure multinational firms comply with environmental laws? Let's hear from the Environment Minister after the break.